This is our class on the love languages, the 5 love languages. I would ask you to keep your mics muted while we're doing group things, but also at the same time to unmute it to talk. I am truly lousy at paying attention to people raising their hands in Zoom. I am told it's a little icon that appears, but after about 10 years of doing Zoom, even long before COVID, yeah, I'm not good at it. So just go ahead and unmute yourself and start talking at any point in time. I think it'll be a much better class if we all share together and talk together as we go along. As I said, hope you will participate and we'll talk. I can talk for hours. That's really not a problem. It's what I've done most of my life. So I'll invite you to interrupt, please, at any point in time and start talking. So you should have gotten an email that had the evaluation on it. If not, it's in the back of your book. So I hope that you have had a moment to take the evaluation just to kind of see what you think or what that evaluation says your love language is. You probably already knew it long before you ever did that particular little activity. But if you haven't done it, I encourage you to do that kind of now, just so you have some idea of what we're talking about. The evaluation along with the materials were all written by Dr. Gary Chapman. And basically he wrote this book based on his experiences as a psychologist to kind of guide the rest of us into understanding what our love languages are. And one of the most important parts, I think, is not only that we know what our own love language is, but that we know what our partner's love language is. Because honestly, me knowing mine is not nearly as helpful as me knowing John's. And I noticed John's on here. He'll probably click off in a little while to go eat dinner. I ate early, but he didn't. So if you see him disappear, he's probably not mad about anything I say, but he will be on and off. So again, welcome. The quiz itself, as I said, is in the back of the book. If you've had time to do it, that's great. Or I think Shannon sent out a link to the quiz earlier today for me. But again, I think you probably knew your love language already. But I have to tell you, they change over time, and we'll talk about that as we continue into this conversation. And as they change, sometimes you may not notice it so much as your partner or the people that you're dating or whomever you're around does notice it. Mine has actually changed over the last 5 years since the last time I taught this class. So it was very interesting for me to do the evaluation to see where it is now. Amazingly, John knew exactly what mine was. He had no trouble naming mine. And while he's still on here, I'm just going to go ahead and admit that I got his wrong. After 27 years of living together, I got his love language wrong for his primary language.
That right.
What I thought would have been his first one was actually his secondary. So, you know, you learn, you grow, you get better at recognizing it, but more importantly, you get better at working with it. So that's kind of the goal of where we are and the goal of what we're going to do for the rest of this time. What I would like for us to do, though, is to start with a little time of meditation. So I'll invite you just to take a deep breath where you are. Maybe feet flat on the floor and your hands comfortably resting in your lap. Deep breath. Release all the crazy of your day. Release all the different things that have been going on. All of what might be bothering you, all of the things that irritate you, as much as you can, let that go. Anything bouncing around in your head, just try to release that and have one moment of quiet and peace right now. So as we approach this class on love languages and the evaluation that you've done, both of yourself and perhaps your partner did as well, just let the anxiety related to that, of whether we're doing a great job or a really bad job, go. Just send it away. Let that anxiety go away. Celebrate who you are, recognizing that you are perfect and you are whole and you are loved and you are love. I invite you to think of a person that you do love, someone who's close to you. Doesn't have to be your partner, but it can be. But just think of somebody who you truly love. Maybe somebody from your past, might be somebody from your present. Someone still in your life or someone who's passed. Maybe a spiritual teacher or a guide of some kind. Just think about that person and picture them standing on your right-hand side, standing next to you, wishing for you safety and health and acceptance and love. Just picture that person right there with you. Feel the love that comes from them. Now I want you to bring to mind another person, and I want that person to be over on your left. And imagine them wishing for you all kinds of wellness and health, happiness, joy, peace, grace. Feel the kindness and the warmth that comes from that person as well. Now imagine that you're surrounded on all sides by people who love you and care for you. Picture your friends and your family surrounding you in love, in peace, sending you wishes for happiness, well-being, and health. Wishes for grace and joy and peace of mind, calm. Just feel the love coming from all sides, from all around you. And feel the warmth that comes from that. And now I want you to send love the other way. Send it to each of those people who are obviously important to you. And again, whether they're still here with us on this earthly plane or they're with us as our ancestors and our relatives, I invite you to just send love to each one of them. You are love, you are peace, you are grace, you are happiness, and you are good health. Send that message out, but receive that message as well. And let's take that for just a moment into the silence. As you return to this present moment, just remember that you are indeed loved. You are loved. Whether we get all the love languages right or not isn't the most important thing in the world. We are already loved and we are already loved. And I invite you to remember that in all that we do. So a lot of you I know, some of you I don't know quite as well. So I did want to talk about me for just a minute. My name is Hank Lewis. I'm a licensed Unity teacher at CCU Orlando. I'm also in the Unity Worldwide Ministries LUT ministry team. And my latest thing, I'm also on the Southeast Region Board of Directors for the region that our spiritual center is in, which includes 13 states. So it covers a lot of area in the Southeast region. My latest thing is called Serving Ministers and Ministries Collaborative, and I'm founding and principal of it. I will be turning it into Unity to be an alternative ministry. But for those of you at CCU or those of you who are on Facebook and saw my announcement, I'm not leaving CCU. I'm not going anywhere. That is always my foundation and my rock, and have been texting today with Reverend Maggie. So not headed out the door going anywhere else, just doing other things that I feel like I'm called to do. For my day job, because I don't have anything else to do, I'm the Assistant Director of Academic Program Quality at the University of Central Florida, where basically I do accreditation all day. So if you understand accreditation, it's basically where I make sure that if you say as a department or an area that you do something, that you actually do it. So I am that horrible compliance person. People either love me or hate me depending on the day, and I'm okay either way. I just flow with it. Prior to that, I was a professor of business management and ethics for a long time. And I still teach ethics for Unity Worldwide Ministries. I'm a partner. My partner, John, who, as I said, is on here. We have been together for 27 years in October. Sometimes I'm positive we know everything about each other, and then you learn something totally brand new and interesting. So as you know, relationships evolve and continue to grow. I'm a dad to a 10-year-old along with John, and we also have one dog and one cat. So just gonna throw it all out there for you. And I am pretty sure the cat's somewhere in the room with me at the moment. So if you see him crawl by, you'll know. I'm also ADHD. I only throw that in because if the cat does walk by, you'll notice that I will watch him. That's just who I am, been that way for 62 years now. Anything that's shiny and bright will get my attention for a little while, and we'll just keep right on going anyway. I'm also dyslexic. I have what's called RAND, which is rapid, I always screw this up, rapid automatic naming dyslexia, which means when a word pops up, I might know what it is, I might not. So sometimes that causes me to read a little more slowly than other people, but that's all right too. Have done pretty well with that happening. So the bottom line for this book, the bottom line for everything in every relationship is communication. Learning somebody's love language, your own or your partner's or anybody else, is kind of a waste of time if you're not willing to communicate together. So this is one of my favorite pictures. I used to teach communication, where if you'll notice, the picture that's in the person on the left is the identical picture to the person on the right. That is actual communication, where we've talked, we've had feedback, and we both know exactly what it is we're talking about. It's only communication if we both understand the same thing, if we both got the same message while we were talking. So I just throw this one out there to say that's kind of the bottom line of every relationship. And I know many of you have been in very long-term relationships, you understand this, but it's important in a new relationship as well. It's important in your relationships at work. It's important with your relationships with children. So I just put it out there that we need to understand that communication is the key to everything that we're going to do. So a friend of mine taught this class in 2011, and I stole this directly from her. And it's basically, why does love matter anyway? What is the important part of it? What is it that we should know? What is it that we should understand? So I borrowed this just so we could all look at it and say that basically, you know, love does matter to every one of us. It is one of those foundational things that we need to be successful, that we need to feel and to understand. And according to psychology, it is the #1 primary emotional need of every human. I don't think anybody would argue with that necessarily, because we need to know that we are loved and that we belong and that we fit in somewhere. Mm-hmm. It's interesting to me that sometimes we forget this when we're not talking about an intimate relationship with someone. So I'm just going to throw out there, because I know there's some board members and some others on here from different spiritual centers, that it's also very important in our spiritual centers, in our church home, whatever that is, that we also feel wanted and needed and like we belong. That's a key part of why people come back or don't come back on occasion. So it's important for us to consider that and to remember that, not only in our personal relationships, but in our wider area. It's important for those of you who are still working, if you are managing a group of people, that's important. One of the things that Gary Chapman did was, once he found out how powerful this book was and what he was teaching, was that he wrote some other books. There's one specifically for love languages for teenagers. There's one on love languages for children. There's one on love languages at work.
That'd be good.
And I think that's a very interesting one. And next week, we'll talk about some of the languages and how they apply to children and to work. I'm not going to get there this week, but next week, we'll kind of hit some of those areas as well. But you know, you hear all the time, especially in music, that people will do just about anything for love. I put a few on here that are out of songs: climb mountains, swim seas, endure hardship, give your life for somebody that you love. It is interesting to me, having been a teacher for so many years, when I see school shootings, to hear about the teachers who put themselves in harm's way to protect their children. As parents, you would do the exact same thing. Truthfully, many of us would do it for our pets as well. So, you know, if it's a love relationship, then that is one of the things that you're willing to do, is you care about someone enough, you love them enough, that you would do just about anything to maintain their love, to have that love, and to stay with it. We all need to be loved. We all need to feel like we're loved. And I'm curious, so here goes the first question. What's the oddest thing you've ever done to let somebody know you love them? And before you answer, I'm going to throw this out there just so you know. This session is being recorded. So it might end up on a website somewhere for CCU or some other thing. So don't throw anything out there you're not willing to have the world to know about. But I'm curious, what is something that is beyond maybe what people would expect that you've done for love along the way? And again, just unmute yourself and talk. Nothing. Nobody's done anything special or different or odd or unusual, or you're just not willing to share it. That could be it.
Yeah.
That's fine. Just think about it in your head for a minute. What is the boundary that you would go to? Leah, go right ahead. Just undo it and talk, because I really will not watch hands very well.
Okay. For me and Tammy, we've been together, it'll be 10 years in November, and I gave up drugs and alcohol so that I could be in a relationship with her, and it was one of the best things I've ever done. But that came to mind whenever you asked the question.
Cool. Thank you for sharing that. A lot of us have a number of vices that we hang on to. So it is very important that we are willing to, if it means keeping a relationship, to let those go. And we'll talk some about that later on as well. So one of the things that I did when I was younger was I taught in the Georgia State prison system. And I spent 9.5 years teaching in the prison system. And one of the things I noticed was that the most absolute torturous thing you could ever do to somebody was put them in isolation. And, you know, when I was in my 20s, which is when I first started teaching there, I thought that, you know, no big deal. You spend 24 hours by yourself in the dark, you come back. But reality is, as I've grown older, I've seen that very differently. You know, being isolated from others, where you don't have that love relationship or even the ability to speak to someone else, to have any contact with another human, is very much like the most torturous thing I do believe that you can do to people. And I've talked to a number of people who have been in jail and have experienced that, and who say that that was the worst part of the entire experience. So we all want to belong. We all want to be around each other. We know that love's important, so we want to do it well. Unity's second principle says that there's a spark of the divine in every one of us. And that spark of the divine is the Christ presence that lives in every one of us. And we should treat each other accordingly, whether you are my partner or you're somebody that I just saw on the street. It shouldn't make any difference. We're to love everybody and to keep going and to keep moving on in that direction. Often you'll hear Namaste being said to someone, and Namaste is Sanskrit, which basically comes out to the divine in me recognizes the divine in you. And that is so easy to say when we're at church. When I'm around other people who are spiritual or other people who are practicing their own religion, it's really easy to recognize the divine in people. But the key is to recognize that divine in every person. The person that we saw this afternoon trying to find food in a trash bin on the side of the street. Finding love for that person, seeing them as a child of God and equally important and equal to me in the eyes of the divine, with that divine spirit and the Christ presence living in each one of us. So I think sometimes we just take a step back when things are getting kind of rough in a relationship and remind ourselves we're all divine. That same divinity in me is also in my partner, is in everyone else. And sometimes that's a step back that's very important for us, to just take that moment and realize, once again, one, why I love you, and two, that you are also embodying that divine spirit. Because honestly, sometimes you can get a little tense and a little ticked off, and I'm not much of a yeller, but sometimes. So it's nice to just remember we're all divine. We all have that Christ presence living in us. And a part of what lives in us is what Dr. Chapman calls the love tank. This is probably the thing that I got most out of this book the first time I ever read it, is that every person has a love tank. And I never really thought of it that way. It just seemed very interesting to me that we're talking like a tank. And we're not talking about like those little tanks that we have outside next to our grills and that kind of things. We're talking more like those great big tanks that are underneath the gas station that the big trucks come and fill up. All of us have that love tank living within us and is a part of us. And all of us are looking for the emotional type of love that will fill that tank. Again, for me, this is one of the more profound concepts of the entire book. When I think about the love tank and I think about the people that I deal with every day, I have to remind myself we all have that tank. Every one of us has a tank that's somewhere between full and not full, totally empty. And we don't really know what everybody's tank is like on any given day. You see all the memes and the things that say, always be kind because you don't know what somebody's going through. That's very true. And we don't know where they are on that. But it's most important for us to know where it is with the people that we live with. The people who are our partners, or the people that we are dating, or the people that we're going out with. And we know that as a kid, you start on empty. And then we start filling that love tank up as parents and as others who are around them, even the teachers that our child has and that other children have. They're all being filled with that love. It's caring about somebody else. And that tank never goes away no matter how old we get. At 60, that tank is still here, and at whatever comes next, it's still going to be right here. And it's waiting always to be full if it's not already. And there are a lot of different ways that we can fill that tank. The higher power being one of them, our partner, our family, our friends. There's all sorts of people who can fill that tank for us to some degree anyway. But the key is, sometimes we also try to fill it with some really crappy stuff. Alcohol, drugs, sex, all of those kind of things. Every now and then we're trying to put that into the system in place of the love that we're really looking for. And Leah, that's what you were mentioning, really. We're all trying to fill that tank with something. And if it's not exactly what we want and what we can find at that moment, we'll try something else. So I think it's important for us to remember that in dealing with our partners and in dealing in the love languages, there's somebody always trying to keep that tank full. And we want to be the one that helps them to fill that tank and to keep them filled. I think this was the chapter where at the end of it, there was just a question that ended the whole chapter that said, how loved do you feel? and then it said full, empty, or in between somewhere.
Mhm.
You know, we're all there, and I would imagine most of us kind of fluctuate in that tank at different points in time. But we want to have our love tank as full as we can possibly get it. I think that's one of the keys to dealing with one another and dealing with our partners and our spouses. So when we think about our relationships, that's a big part of keeping that love tank filled. So when you think about your relationships, whether it's with your children or with your nieces and nephews, or even just your friends or your spouse, how are those relationships going? Anybody have a friend you've had forever?
Yeah.
Like,
Yes.
I have a friend I've had since I was 3 years old.
Mhm.
We moved into a new house and they lived about 6 houses down the way. We went to every grade of school together, and we still talk to each other every now and then. And we keep up on Facebook. We're about as different as night and day. There's nothing about us that is really similar, but there's a relationship there that's just built on time. So we have friends that are always and forever, even when we don't realize it. But when we first fall in love, it's really what we think it's going to be. It's going to be always, it's going to be forever. Everything's going to be great. In the book, Dr. Chapman talks about the excitement and the euphoria for when you first fall in love. And the phrase I love in this section was when he said, "All is well until it isn't."
Right.
You know, reality is that's the way it is with most of us. Everything is great until something kind of cracks that love tank or something happens so that it's not there. And one of my favorites is the genuine belief that most of us have that we can change the person that we love. Actually, a minister at a church I was in recently asked how many of us had ever tried to make a change in our life, like change things, get rid of a habit that you have and take it away and move to something else. And all of us raised our hand. Yeah, we did. We've done that. And then the next question was, how easy was that? Yeah, not usually very easy. And then the next question was, well, then why do you think you're going to change anybody else?
Yeah.
Reality is, if it's that difficult for me to change me, I'm definitely not going to be changing John into anything other than who John was when I met John. We do evolve, as I said, we do each grow and things happen with us. But in no cases are we really going to change somebody. They may choose to change or to make some changes in themselves for us or for the relationship, but we're not going to be what changed them. And I think sometimes in that euphoria and that excitement when we first meet somebody, we genuinely think, it's just that one little thing. We can fix that. I can fix that. Yeah, right. Not so much, my friends. But then it sometimes in relationships sort of feels like we have a slow leak. Some of you know I hurt my right knee a couple of weeks ago, and I don't know how. I've had surgery on the left knee. That one's great, but the right one's now hurting. So I went to my doctor and he looked at me and he goes, you know how like sometimes with a tire you run over a nail and you know exactly what it is? And I'm like, yeah, I understand that. And he goes, well, sometimes those tires just lose air and you have no clue why. And he was just trying to remind me that basically, I don't really know what's wrong with my knee. I don't know why it's in the shape it's in today, but it's just happening. And it's one of those things where you just kind of go, okay, cool. This is going to happen. And I have banned him from ever using the word old age. So he knows that that's not something he should say to me. So he says sweet things like, as you move forward in life, things change. And I just smile. And then I'm like, yeah, you might as well just have gone on and said the part about me getting older, my knees are going to be different. But reality is that's the way it is in a lot of our relationships as well. It just starts to change slowly. And sometimes we don't notice it because it's not a huge change. But the relationship starts to twist around and take on some other things. And I like to just call that daily life. You know, the infatuation part of the euphoria of falling in love and all of that, you sort of miss some of those things. Like now, after 27 years together, we have to pay for the house and the cars and the kid and the pets and all the other stuff. And that daily life starts to work in there. And that can start to affect where your love tank is and how full you feel all the time. So just kind of remember that as we look at the love languages themselves. I couldn't tell if somebody said something or not. I'm sorry. So the word at the very bottom of this slide was in the book. It's called limerence. And basically, this is that part of a relationship where you're just obsessed with that person. Like, this is going to work. This is going to be the best relationship I've ever had. And usually it lasts for about 2 years, according to most psychologists. And we believe that everything is going to be great. This is what I personally call the Prince Charming effect, where we really see our prince or our princess, and they're going to take us away from it all, and everything is going to be better because this human is now in my life.
Mhm.
I'm not going to ask you to say if you've ever had that feeling about somebody, but most of us have, where we think that this is the person who can solve all of our problems, or I don't like who I am right now or the situation I'm in, and this person can help get me out of that. It's the premise of most Disney movies from when I was a kid. If you go back and watch them with that thought in mind, you'll see them very differently than you ever had before. But limerence is really just fantasizing that someone's going to save you and change everything. They're the one. They're that person that's going to be there, and they're going to make everything good for you. So I threw this in. This is not in his book, but it's just some of the similarities and the differences between limerence and actual love. This is that infatuation stage where the similarities are that they look similar. The attraction is definitely real to that person. And sometimes it can be the most implausible person that you find yourself falling for, or having this daydream about how they could save you and do, you know, make everything better in your world. The psychologists say it can be anybody at any time, just depending on how it hits you at that given moment. And the problem with the whole limerence versus love kind of conundrum is that while they look similar, they're really different too. Love requires a meaningful connection with another person, not just an infatuation with them. Limerence is all about the lust part, and love is about a lasting relationship for most. Some of the differences I think are pretty interesting. One, you think that person's going to complete you. I don't know the ages of all of you, but for those of you who don't know, I grew up in the Southern Baptist Church. And in the Southern Baptist Church, they had this huge movement where they decided that all single people shouldn't be. You should find your other half, which just amused me. And then about 10 years later, someone wrote a book called One is a Whole Number. And you are already 100% who you're supposed to be. You don't need anybody else to finish you or to complete you or any of that kind of stuff. We augment each other. We complement each other. We're not going to make you a whole person. That's just not how it works. And you have all been in enough relationships to know that is not how it works. But we sometimes do feel that way, that this is the perfect person. And sometimes we want that person even when we know they're not good for us. We see all those red flags going up and we just keep right on going and we ignore them like they're not there and keep moving along. But reality is we know when someone is right for us and when they're not pretty soon. You know, we don't necessarily need someone to point it out for us. We genuinely already know it. You ignore that person's flaws, that's those red flags. Again, we think that we can change them and make them a whole different person. That doesn't really happen. You start neglecting your own needs for theirs. And then for some of us, it really is just a case of being scared of connection. There are times in life when it's hard to want to connect with somebody else. And even when the right person, whatever that means, comes along, we have built up such a wall and such a resistance to ever being around other people that it's very difficult for us to move into the direction of love. So here's our options. We can just be miserable together forever. We can try again with something new and exciting, or someone new and exciting and more interesting, which a lot of people do. We can recognize that infatuation part is real and it's going to happen and it's going to last for a little while. Then we're going to move into real love or not. But I think the key thing is the asterisk at the bottom. If we're going to move into that true love setting, it's going to require an intentional act on our part. It's a choice, it's discipline, it's the will that we put forward. It's our personal growth that's going to make something work. Go back to that communication part. When we look at communication, sometimes it's really easy to talk to the one you love. And sometimes those are difficult conversations. But we choose whether we're going to move forward with them or not. That comes to each one of us. Now, sometimes they choose for us. I have a friend who tells me all the time that the best thing that ever happened, because she was going to try to make her marriage work, was when her ex-husband walked in and said, "I'm not going to do this anymore." And it sounds cruel and hard-hearted, but for both of them, it was the best thing in the world. And they are now two of the best parents I've ever known, who work so well together since they are no longer together. So we just have to decide where we're going to go and how we're going to do the communication and what's going to be best for us in the long term. Any thoughts or comments up to this point? Nothing? So the actual love languages themselves, which is the point of this class. Most of these you've probably heard of along the way. There's probably not anything that's really new in any of the love languages themselves. Some of the ways they're described, I think, are a little different than maybe I would have thought. But again, I encourage you not only to listen to hear your love language, but also to hear the person you may be dating or the partner or your child's love language. Excuse me. I think it's important to know your primary and your secondary. For most people, there's not that many, if you do the scoring and evaluation counting stuff, there's not that much of a difference between your primary and secondary. But the further out you go, you might get to the point of none. I have seen people do the evaluation where one of the five got a 0.
Mm-hmm.
And it's not unusual. Right. Where, yeah, this means absolutely nothing to me. It has no value to me. It has no value to who I am. And that is important for your partner to know.
Right.
So I don't know if John's still on there or not, but when we first got together, the first Christmas, we each gave each other gifts in the way that we had given them in our families. So he gave me my gift in a paper bag, literally, like the bag he bought it in. And I gave him one that was all wrapped up. And when he opened the gift, it was basically a gift that I wanted somebody to give me. He gives perfect and good gifts. He pays attention. He's very careful. So he likes to give gifts that are meaningful to the person. I would love to say I do that as well, but I'm just going to be honest and say I don't. I usually give people the kind of things that I think I would like, which usually isn't exactly what that person wants or needs or is planning to get. Truthfully, we've done so much better once we just started sending each other a list and say, here's the things I would like. And mine's difficult because my birthday and Christmas are the same day.
Oh, wow.
So it's got, all kind of things. It's not like you get to buy the one gift and done. So it's a little more complicated, but you want to give gifts, and we'll talk about that in a second, that are important to that person. You want to express love in a way that your partner is going to understand it and as it fits them. So I'm going to tell you, if your partner hasn't done the test or hasn't done the evaluation, hand it to them. Give it to your kids if they're older. The younger ones, there's a different version for them. But find out what the love languages are of the people that you deal with on a regular basis. I think it'll surprise you where some of them are. Interestingly, neither John nor I cares one thing about somebody giving us a gift. So that matches well with us. Even though we give each other gifts, that's not our primary love language or our secondary language for either of us. So not quite as important. If you need additional support, if you've said, this is my love language based on these evaluations, but I'm not sure this is true, then here are 3 questions I would encourage you to consider, or 3 things to consider. First of all, look at your childhood. How did your family express love? In the beginning of most people's relationships, they revert back to that. We are the people who raised us, whether we like that or not, until we do something to make sure we're not anymore. So very often we're in that that relationship or that way of doing things. Examine your childhood. How did your family express love to you? How did you express it back to them? How was it received when you did? And that might help you understand what your love language is. At the same time, what's your first instinct when you're going to give somebody a gift? Most of us can answer that. So then take it a step further. What's your first instinct when you're going to express love to someone? Truthfully, it's usually how we want to receive love.
Mhm.
And again, that's not a bad thing, but it might well not be our partner's number one love language. So again, find out what theirs are as well. The other one is, how have you been hurt in the past? What was missing in a relationship?
Touch.
And that, if that is important to you, Angie, then that would be one of the issues there. That's why, again, we need to know what each other's love language is and kind of go with them. So the first of the love languages is words of affection, of affirmation, sorry. There's a quote in this book from Mark Twain that says that he can live for 2 months on a good compliment. And there are a lot of people who that fits. So that might be somebody on here's primary love language. If words of affection is yours, you want to hear, I love you, over and over and over again. Okay, now I'm going to take this one out for just a second and say, if you live with somebody and have for a long time, you should probably be saying that along the way anyway. But for people that words of affirmation are their number one gift, that is something that they need to hear. They need to make sure that they're hearing that over and over. People who have words of affirmation as their primary gift want to be acknowledged. They want to be praised both at home and at work. And if the acknowledgement's unexpected, that's bonus points.
Yeah.
If you're just doing it because of something that you knew was going on, or you knew the person needs this push right now, that's great. But wow, how nice it is to get those words of affirmation when that's not the issue. Just random. Just affirm your partner and affirm the one that you're with. William James, the psychologist, said one of the deepest human needs is to feel appreciated. And that's true. So most people will have this somewhere in their top 3. Not everybody. Some people, that's not a big deal to them, but most people, if you study where the love languages go, that's one of the top 3. For people who have words of affirmation as their primary. They know, they care about the details about themselves, and they really do want you to notice them. So when you get your hair cut, or you style it differently, or you have on some new clothes, you really do need to mention that for that person. If you know this is your partner's love language and their primary one, then you need to go out of your way to mention the small things that you notice. The catch is we have to notice. So we've really got to pay attention to our partners in order to notice when they're doing something different or new, or something has changed. One of the psychologists, when I was studying some of this, had said that probably the most important thing your partner ever wants to hear right after I love you is thank you.
Gratitude.
Right. So if your partner's primary language is words of affirmation, then say thank you. There's not much that is nicer than just somebody thanking you for doing something. If you went out of your way to do it, that's great. But if it's just something you do every day, say thank you. Or they do every day, say thank you. Let them know that you appreciate what it is they're doing, and that you're noticing, that you're really paying attention. So the reactions that you're going to see on all the different slides. Words of affirmation create intimacy, bring about the full potential of the partner, heals wounds. That one's a big one for most of us. I love you and thank you go a long way in healing wounds from past relationships, and even things that are going on now, or past things in your own relationship. And, you know, the center section, I think, is probably one of my favorites. It's not just about verbal flattery to get something, because this really has nothing to do with manipulation of someone. It is genuinely loving your partner enough to affirm them in the great things they do for you every day and the things that are there. Some of the don'ts, they're not on the slide, but I'm gonna throw them out there. Most people who have words of affirmation don't even want your constructive criticism. You know, we always want to help make people better. So we toss it right on out there, those of us who aren't very good with this. They don't need it. Most people who have words of affirmation don't want it, even if it's constructive. Just throwing that out there is one of the things that have been proven in psychology. It's just a reminder that words have a lasting impact. You know, the tongue is sharper than the two-edged sword thing that is in the Hebrew scripture, I believe. But the bottom line is it does, and we can't take words back. So where you might say something to me and it's going to just kind of blow off my shoulder, if words of affirmation is my primary language, I'm going to take it to heart and hold it there for a long time. So be very careful with the words that you speak. And then the bottom line is just, if you notice something, say it. Compliment, compliment, compliment. And if it's something that somebody's trying for the first time, and I'm going to take this one out and say whether it's words of affirmation is your primary or not, encourage people. We don't do enough of that, I don't believe, in the world. We love to pull it apart and take it down and you know, not help people build up. But let's build each other up and encourage one another, being sincere, being very specific about what it is we think someone has done well. And focus on praising those people who we know their primary language is words of affirmation. So I'm going to ask, again, you don't have to share, but if you're willing, is this anybody's primary language? Okay, Maria. I see your hand.
Yes. I just, you're right, and really very interesting. And but something that impacted me the most so far is like there are many things that have happened since we were growing up. We were show love in a different ways. certain homes, okay, this is if I give you food, I give you clothing, that's the way they show love. But not necessarily, nowadays that we have grown up, that we have other experiences, we have some other developmental opportunities. So we know, okay, but we have that tank in different ways, like
Right.
empty full. And right now, so I think that there is the moment of clarification of all of that sometimes, so we didn't know, but we are trying. And when we express our love in certain way, the other person maybe is different or have grown in a different way where they have been shown love differently. And there is like a clashing them. And, oh, I don't like you, tell me this, I don't like that, or whatever. But it's very interesting, this, honestly. I'm very grateful to hear that and to be in this class, definitely. Thank you, Hank.
Text me a account password. Okay, 003.
Thank you for sharing.
1991.
Thank you for sharing that, Maria. My dad was one of those people that you were talking about. The fact that he had probably never hugged us except when we were little kids. And his idea of expressing love was, I paid for your food, I paid for the house. And as I got older, I paid for your car insurance because you didn't have the money to do that. That was his way of doing that. His primary love, we're going to talk about later, though, is acts of service.
Little a.
So he was loving us in the way that he understood love, because that was his love.
99 and the dollar sign.
Okay, somebody needs to mute, please. He was doing the best he could and sharing with us from what he understood. This is to say to all of us, there's different languages, so let's find out what our partner is, and then try to work with that. We'll talk about some of that in a minute, of what if it's really just drastically different or something I'm not comfortable with. And we'll kind of dance around that one for a moment. So the second language we're going to look at is quality time. If you look at I think it's in the frequently asked questions in the book, I'm not positive, but over the 30 years since this book has been published and Dr. Chapman has been following it, this is actually the #1 language based on his study and his work. That this is more people than anything else, than any of the other love languages. So I think that's kind of interesting. This being #1, we're probably going to run into a lot of people who have this love language. And the first thing that's on the slide says, spend uninterrupted time or undivided attention to someone. Put down your telephone and laptop. For years, I never, ever pulled out my laptop when I was doing something like watching television or spending time with somebody. And I have to say that for probably the last 10 years, I rarely sit down that I don't have it open in my lap. There's things going on TV when John and I are watching a show. There are commercials that go on and he'll make a comment about them. I don't have any clue what he is talking about, because I am so enraptured in that stupid laptop, or in doing something else, or fiddling with my phone, that I miss half of what's going on. Another one of the big important things that we teach is to spend time in the here and now, in the present moment. That's hard to do when you got a device in your hand all the time. And it's just so interesting to me that I've turned into that person, because that was something that I was so violently opposed to for so long. But it's all about spending time together. A friend of mine bought it's called a telephone jail, and she bought it at Cracker Barrel, and it looks kind of like an outhouse, and it sits in the middle of her table, and when you go to her home, you put your phone in it, and she puts that little lock on it, and you're not getting it back till we're done.
That's good.
It's not a bad idea, I got to tell you. Another friend of mine has a rule that when we go out to eat, everybody puts their phone in the middle of the table. And the first person who looks at their phone during the process pays for everybody else to eat.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's a rough one. But reality is sometimes we're so much into those devices and things that are going on, we miss the present.
Mhm.
And the love language of quality time is all about that quality time, spending time with each other, undivided attention, quality conversation, which means not only talking, but listening, hearing what the person is really saying and going on. The book talks about the Dead Sea and the babbling brook. So if you haven't read that, I'll let you read it. But basically what it's talking about is that some people are totally quiet. And if you go on a date, they don't say anything. And then you have the other one who doesn't hush the whole time. And that works really well because the quiet one will let the other one talk nonstop. And everybody's happy to start with. And then as you stay together longer and longer, that can get kind of irritating. Like, will he ever say anything? Will he ever shut up kind of thing? So you want to just be careful to not be an extreme of either one. And if you are, then learn how to use that for the quality time. Listening is an art that we aren't very good at in America. So if the more that we can do that, the better it'll be. It's important that quality time be a meaningful activity. It can just mean sitting next to each other watching a show on television. It can also mean finding out what your partner enjoys and going and doing that with them.
Mhm.
So whatever that is, you want it to be meaningful to that person. The reactions that are listed is that you're going to enjoy the time together and you really learn who the other person is. John had one of those birthdays that you get like at 40, 50, 60. I'm not going to throw out which one he is, but he is considerably younger than I am. So he hasn't hit 60 yet. And his mother decided we should play a game where she asked us questions, kind of like newlywed game, to see what we knew about each other. I failed. Just going to be honest. He knew everything that she asked about me. And I didn't. And, that's rather embarrassing at a certain point in time because you have spent 26 and a half years with somebody. You should probably at least know their favorite band or singer or some really basic stuff. But it's important. And it was brought home to me, the importance of this is his primary. So I need to stop with my laptop, stop with my phone, and really pay attention and spend quality time together. And for us, that was an important learning experience. So anybody who has this as their primary that wants to share anything? Y'all are a very quiet group.
Well, I'll say it's not mine, but I had an experience recently where I met a friend, and I'm almost always a person who's taking the pictures. I always have a camera with me. If I go meet friends, I take my camera. It's kind of how I occupy myself, as well as, it's what I do and it's what I've always done. And we sat down to have coffee. And we did our little pictures from our get together, and then she said, and this is the point where we lose Vicky, because I was doing something with my camera, and I gotta say, like, I get it, but I was also really irritated. It felt demanding and controlling, and I walked away angry about it for a while. So I can see where, and it's not that I didn't want to spend time with her, but I guess it's true that we were on a different wavelength.
Right. And really the whole point of learning the 5 love languages is to figure out where all the wavelengths are. You know, again, if it's not mine and it's not even close to mine, then that makes it complicated for me to figure out how to match what it is you need. Luana?
Hi, Hank. I have the quality time like a first language. Are you listening to me?
Uh-huh.
Okay. But like I said, it's the most common one because is this happen? You have the almost perfect relationship. So it's like everybody want and everybody want to make, but you have to find the other one like you to accomplish this. Even if you want it, you need to find the other person to share with it and make it happen, right?
Either that or they have to be willing to change.
That's that's difficult.
Not
Like you said.
necessarily changing who I am, but changing who I am with you if that is what you need in your world. And that is what we need in our relationship. Walter?
I was just gonna say it's not my, it's actually my third, but it's my husband's second. I would argue though that's actually his first, because when we did the test, it was a couple of weeks ago, before we moved here to Florida, and both of us were involved in a much weightier job that took us time away from each other, and so both of ours are acts of service. And I think that's just because we weren't spending enough time helping each other around the house. But what I was gonna say about quality time was his idea of quality time is outside doing things together, you know, like out doing things, not indoors, which is hard with our 2-year-old right now. But like he loves to go, like specifically, you know, right now we went to Epcot this morning, just to hang out for a few minutes and have lunch, and that was because that's what he wanted to do. And so it's really about, I found with him, finding the things that he wants to do, because it's not always what I want to do. He loves to go window shopping in the mall. I hate that with a passion, but I have to figure out how to do it, you know, and not look like I'm absolutely hating it. So, but anyway, that's what I wanted to share. You were right on when you were saying that it has to be something they want to do.
Yes.
There he is. So.
Leah?
Yes, I was just going to share that as far as putting away like devices and stuff like that, Tammy and I, like I said earlier, have been together almost 10 years, and that is definitely an issue with us. Tammy hardly ever puts down her mobile device, and it even got to the point that I had joked around and told her I was going to marry her tablet. But she's gotten better. We've been working on it, and like we tell each other, okay, during prime time hours, we're going to watch TV together. We're going to do something together, but we're not going to be on our devices, and it's working out pretty good. So,
Good. Joanne?
When my ex-husband and I would go out to dinner, would be like on a Saturday night, and because on Sunday he played racquetball, well, his phone would be going off about making all these arrangements, who's playing, who's going to show up, and all this to play racquetball. And it's just me and him at dinner, and all I wanted to do was enjoy the time we had together. And it turned out to be all about racquetball. So needless to say, we stopped going out to dinner. I just made sure we had our usual meal that we like to go out and have and make it at home. And that way I could read a book while he was dealing with racquetball and making arrangements for that. So, but yeah, I've experienced that several times. So it can be quite irritating when you want to talk about the week, talk about the day, or plan something to do together or whatever, you know, but that's the way it was.
Cool.
Can't
Thank you.
change that.
Right. I appreciate all of you sharing. The bottom line for all of us is figuring out exactly how it works for us in our relationships.
Mhm.
It can be very different for each person. It can be very different for every couple or every relationship. Walter, you mentioned going to the mall. That is like torture to me. But I will go because John loves to go to the mall. It's not my favorite thing in the world. And I probably do look miserable, to be honest, but I try. But sometimes it's bending ourselves and it's going beyond ourselves to do whatever it is that matches. And if it's being outside or if it's, whatever it takes, then most of us are going to give it a shot. We'll try it if the relationship means enough to us that we want to keep it around. There's so many different ways to spend quality time with somebody, and finding out what your partner likes most is very helpful. And finding something that you both like is even better. If you can find that common ground that matches with both of you, then that's a wonderful time that you can spend together.
Mhm.
So gifts is the next of the love languages. There's a statement that says in all cultures, love is accompanied by gift giving. Okay. Normally with a gift, the thought behind it is far more important than the actual gift. I have pictures hanging in my office that the 10-year-old did when he was 7, 8, 9, and those ages. I have pictures that are hanging in my office here at home. And to me, those have far more meaning to me that he sat down and drew it for my birthday or for Christmas or whatever. Then he went to the dollar store and bought me some hideous cologne that cost $1 and then thought I might wear it. But if your love language is getting a gift, then you want it to be something that's meaningful to you. You want it to be something that's important. So that's where you have to know your partner. Same as doing the quality time. If you're going to spend time with them doing things they enjoy, you need to know what it is. If you're going to give them a gift, you need to know what's important to them. Often a memento or something after a trip or a date, something that they can take home is a memory that they'll see often and remember. Visual symbols of love.
Mhm.
Doesn't matter if it's purchased or handmade, expensive or inexpensive. It's generally just that you thought enough about them to do something. And again, with everything, unexpected is wonderful. A little surprise gift is nice now and then. Holidays, birthdays, all those things are expected. But again, some people give gifts better than others. John is brilliant at it. I am not. First or second, I think it was the first year we were together. He actually gave me a keyboard, which he had paid enough attention to know that was something that I would like and love and care for. And honestly, I can't remember what I gave him, which is sad. It probably says a lot about what it was. So if gifts is the thing that is most important to your partner or to the person you're dating or even to your kid, then find out what it is that's important to them and work with that. We thrive not, like gifts is not mine, but if it were, the thriving would be the thoughtfulness and the gesture in the gift more so than the gift itself.
Mhm.
There's just because. I didn't have to get you anything. I just did because. Those are the best kinds that you can get. And again, it just demonstrates the value of your relationship and that I thought enough of you to think about you during my day. And then to get you something to commemorate that. Does anybody have gifts as their primary language?
Mine is 0.
I don't have gifts, but I will say that I was with someone for 10 years. And I think because I grew up where birthdays were celebrated and important, and that was your day, I have that desire or that expectation that birthdays are going to be celebrated. And I was with this person who just didn't care at all. And for 10 years, like he couldn't remember my birthday, and I would go way out of, way out of bounds to do all kinds of great things on his birthday, and he kind of was to the point in life where he didn't even want to remember birthdays. And it was a big deal. It was a big point of contention between us. And it wasn't that he wasn't, he'd call and say, well, can we do this next week or something? I mean, it wasn't unreasonable, but for whatever reason, I feel like birthdays should be celebrated.
It's interesting because so when we adopted Chase, he was 3.5, and his adoptive mom, he has 3 parents, grew up as a Jehovah's Witness. So gifts weren't anything they ever did, and celebrations weren't anything they ever did. So for Christmas, when he turned 4, was the first time he had ever gotten gifts the way we do at Christmas. And it is so interesting. We have a video of him just standing in the room, turning around, just staring at all of it, like, what is all of this? And finally he goes, is this mine? So, it's kind of the opposite of what you were saying, Vicki, that being around them and being around Holly, his mom, that's not how she grew up. They now all do birthdays and Christmas and all the other stuff, but it was just a very different way. But one of the cool things is she's good at gifts.
Yeah. It's not the gift to me.
Right.
It's the acknowledgement of that being celebrated on that day, and I mean, I wouldn't care if I didn't get a gift at all, but it's the attention, at least from the person that I'm with. So.
Thank you. I agree completely. So if that is your area, work with your partner so they know. The next one is acts of service. Doing the things your partner wants you to do is a key to acts of service. And it doesn't always have to be about a chore. For some of us, that is really kind of the greatest thing you can do in my world.
Mhm.
Cleaning, cooking, mowing the grass, taking out the garbage, moving the garbage cans. All of those are things that are important to me. Just because we both live busy lives, so let's work together on getting them done.
Mhm.
But acts of service are really more about things that take some effort and some planning and time and energy to accomplish them. So it's not just chores, which is what most people think. Acts of service is really just spending that time being with someone, but doing something together that they both enjoy. So you can see that they all kind of tie in together. All of the love languages are connected. It's not like you're in a box and this is it.
All right.
They all work together in a lot of different ways. Acts of service given without being asked. So take the trash out without being told for the 14th time to please take the trash out. But the flip side of that is if you are on the other side in that relationship, thank you is a wonderful thing. And that is probably where I do the least good job, is noticing that somebody actually did the things I wanted them to do and say thank you. So that's all kind of interrelated and a part of it. Acts of service given without being asked, as I said. Love is a choice. You don't coerce love. I can harass you about doing something 1,000 times, and you may eventually do it, but that's really not an act of service. That's maybe self-preservation, or you just want me to shut up or something like that. All of those things kind of flow in there. Reaction is the sense of importance to your partner, that they noticed something needed to be done and they did it to help you.
Mhm.
One of the things that the book talked about were the stereotypes. So let me say first, the 2 evaluations that are in the back of the book are way too heteronormative for somebody like me who teaches diversity and inclusion. So that they had a section for him and a section for her just actually made me laugh. But normally it would be more like ticking me off than making me laugh. So I have found, though, among my friends that many of them hold very true stereotypes of what men should do and what women should do in a relationship. I would encourage you to get rid of those.
Mhm.
This is our home, this is our household, we do things together. I don't really care what the stereotype is. We just need to do things. Chase jokingly calls me mom most of the time because he thinks it's funny and he thinks it irritates me, but actually it kind of makes me smile. That he doesn't, he's trying to match it into those stereotypes he learns at school. But at the same time, he's the kid who took the rainbow colored tie-dye kind of backpack. And the first kid looked at him and went, because it had a lot of pink in it, that's a girl's. And he just looked at it and went, colors are colors, and kept right on going.
Awesome.
Which is what we want out of our kids. But, sometimes there are the stereotypes that go along with acts of service. Men take out the trash, women wash the dishes, all that kind of foolishness, which I hope we're outgrowing in so many ways.
Hey, give him a big old hug from me for that one.
I'll do that. But the bottom line is we're partners. We're spouses. We are dating. We are whatever we are. And acts of service come in for all of us and come into play for all of us, no matter what. So the last of the 5 love languages is physical touch.
Yeah.
It is an outward sign of communicating love. Most people immediately go to sex. That is not what physical touch is about. That is part of it. That is an intimacy that is part of it. But anytime somebody touches you, whether it's just on your shoulder or your arm or your knee, those tactical receptors send impulses to the brain that they're saying this is a good thing. Now, the flip side of that is some people have been touched in ways that it wasn't a good thing. So this is where you need to know your partner.
Mhm.
This is where you need to know whomever you're dating and what it is that makes them comfortable. Touching, kissing, holding each other, cuddling, all of that stuff is great. But if that causes a barrier for that person, you need to know that up front.
Mhm.
Likely, this would not be their number 1 love language, but it could be. It's just that you need to understand all of the rules and all of the things that have happened in the past, and they will share them with you when they are ready.
Mhm.
But if somebody says, don't run your fingers through my hair, then don't run your fingers through their hair. It's really kind of easy. No means no in the real world. But physical touch can be anything but just somebody walking by and putting their hand on your shoulder.
Mhm.
When we used to pass the baskets at CCU for tithe, very often the person taking it up, if I was sitting in one of the pews, would just touch me on the shoulder. That is meaningful to me. This is not my number 1, but that is meaningful. That's
Mhm.
just saying, I recognize you, I see you, and I'm glad to see you. It's really very basic. And it's one of those basic needs that most of us have, that wanting to be loved and to belong and to be a part of something. And it says generally that you're cared for and you're loved, and there's some security in that. But again, just be careful to make sure that you understand what is and isn't okay. Talk to your partner, find out what it is that they like or don't like, and how this means something to them. So there are a couple of summary slides I want to do, then I'm going to tell you what your homework is. Always homework. I'm a teacher. Sorry. So this one is just a summary slide. You can actually Google 5 love languages and this will pop up. It's how to communicate, actions to take. And it's really just very simple things. So if it's words of affirmation, sending an unexpected note or card to somebody is meaningful to them. Physical touch, hug, kiss, all that. Show physical affection often, but sometimes it really is just as simple as touching somebody on the shoulder or touching their arm.
Mhm.
In my previous life, I was president of a university, and I think we counted up that I've done over 350 graduation ceremonies or convocations and all that fun stuff where you have on all those robes and things. And the best thing that anybody could do to me before one started was just to put their hand in the middle of my back. just to let me know. And my teachers learned this pretty quickly, and the VPs and others, that this is something that we know it's a little nerve wracking for you, but we got you. It's all good. So it doesn't have to be complicated. It doesn't have to be full on anything. It can just be a simple touch. Receiving gifts, thoughtful gifts and gestures, small things are important, and just expressing your thanks to somebody. Quality time, create a special moment, do something special with that person. Walter, go to the mall. Whatever it is we have to do, that's just a part of the deal. Acts of service, do chores together, make the person breakfast in bed. It's really some very simple things that we can do. And this other one has my favorite part, things to avoid. And I mentioned a couple of them, but if words of affirmation is somebody's key love language, then don't criticize them, even if it's constructive. Just let it go. If they ask you, that's a different story. But just to throw it out there because you think it'll help them and do them good, it probably won't. Physical touch, don't neglect somebody. Don't go long stints of time without any intimacy at all. Receiving gifts, don't forget, as you said, Vicki, a special occasion. Unenthusiastic gift giving, that kind of thing. Quality time, don't allow the distractions in, and don't go long without the one-on-one time. And then acts of service is making the request of others a higher priority. Really, with active services, that's what it's all about. Make your partner your priority. Change something. It's probably things that all of us have done along the way that we wish we could redo, undo. So just be careful of some of the things to avoid. So here's your homework. What is your partner or your spouse or your person you are dating, or do your children or grandchildren, what is their love language? Then try two things to speak your partner's language. It might make you really uncomfortable. Because if it's a 0 on your list and a 12 on theirs, that's a pretty big juxtaposition between the two. But try. Don't start with something grand. You don't need to bring the circus to town or get a bounce house. Just something simple and that you can do over the next week. And then next week, we'll talk about some of them. We'll discuss a lot of other stuff too, but we'll also talk about what you tried and how it worked. That you're willing to share. Always want to throw that part in there. So make sure that you give it a shot. See what happens, see how it goes. I'm going to put it up here now so I can see everybody's face. Drives me crazy. I can only see like 5 people when I have the slide share on. But it is exciting to see all of you. Some of you I get to see occasionally, some of you not so much, but I am delighted to see you now. Thank you for being here. Thank you for participating. If there is anything at all that you have questions about, I should have left it up one more. You can send me, I'll put it over in the chat screen somewhere. If you have any questions, you want to share anything, if I spell my name right, that is helpful.
There you go.
I have a question, Hank.
Okay.
So is it typically or always that if one's love language is, say, acts of service, that's how they show love? Is that how they receive love too?
So if acts of service is my primary love language, that is the way I would prefer to receive love normally. Now, please understand that doesn't mean you can't give me a gift. That's pretty close to a 0 on my list, but feel free. I'm joking. But reality is you use a combination of all of them. But knowing what your partner's primary one is means that you can concentrate in that area and you can work to be more I can't think of a good word, to be more in their lane, in their universe by working with their language. And for a lot of us, it's hard. We'll talk about that some next week. Physical touch is hard for me because it wasn't something that existed in my family. So even this many years later, that is difficult for me.
Mm.
But what does that really mean? It means get over it. Do you want this to work? Is that a part of your partner's love languages? Yes, then get over it and make it work. You know, again, it to me, a lot of it is how much am I willing to do to make this work and work well?
I think for me, definitely physical touch is how I show love and how I want to be shown love. But with Glenn, not so much. I mean, he is an active service kind of guy, and he will do anything that needs to be done. But it doesn't faze him if I reciprocate in that way.
Right. Well, one, I think as partners, we know each other. And you and Glenn have known each other a while, so not a new thing here.
30 years, just
yeah,
a little ahead of
A
you.
little bit. So reality is he knows that that is yours. So he knows that will be your inclination for that to be first. But you know what his is, so you know to make sure you do acts of service as well. So it's really a matter, as I said, of playing them all in. And it goes back, Maria, I think, to part of what you said. All of us grew up in homes where we saw different things from our parents. And, you know, again, my dad, his way of showing love was I pay your bills. You have a house, you have food. But I think the first time I ever heard him or ever remember him saying, I love you, I was like 19 years old. That just wasn't him. But I knew he loved me by all the things he did.
Right.
So I think it's, again, a matter of understanding who you're dealing with. And then how much am I willing to invest in being someone who will give you the love language that you want and that you need. And honestly, sometimes you get to the point of, okay, this just isn't going to work. It's never going to work. Bye. And I hate to ever say that, but it is a reality. One of the things I study are ministers because I find us to be a fascinating crew of humans. And the divorce rate for ministers is about 15% higher than the general population. It's huge in this area. The divorce rate itself is high. And some of you can speak to the fact that it might not have worked the first time, but it really worked well the second time or the third time. Okay, that's great. Sometimes those others, I don't want to say are our training program, but kind of are. And we learn from the things that happen in those relationships so that it finally works when we get to the one, whatever that is for us. Again, I'm not suggesting that you leave whomever you are with and go try again, but I am saying that sometimes that's how we learn. So don't ever bang yourself up. Don't ever beat yourself up. Don't ever get to the point of going, I can't meet your love language. You know, be willing to try.
Right.
Again, for a lot of us, it's difficult and different, but try it.
It takes work. It takes work because you're two different beings, you know,
Right.
and so you have to at least, you know, work it together and spend that time to be able to know what each other needs. Because what I'm hearing from just this little bit today is that you can be completely opposite on the spectrum and still make it work.
Right.
You know, it's the recognition and in that with one another and willing to make those adjustments, because that's what it's all about. Just like I'm interested in the one about work. So I'm going to definitely get that book.
Well, we're going to cover a lot of that actually next week. I'm going to do kids and work next week. We went over the basics of the love languages themselves, and I want us to try it within our own relationships of whatever those happen to be at the moment. But for next week, the reason I scheduled a second week was really just so we could go over some of those things and try them. see what it is that really works for us and what doesn't. But then also see, how does this play out in my work life? I spend a lot of time at work. So it's helpful to know what languages all of the people around me speak.
Mhm.
This is probably my most wonderful job ever. It is my most wonderful job ever. I like the people I work with and I like what I do.
Mhm.
So it's helpful to know what matches with them.
Mhm.
For the ones who are employees who report to me, all of them are millennials. So what is it that will get to them and what is it that will build them up in the next thing? So
Mhm.
I will be honest and say, if you read the book or if you have the love languages book and have read it, just Google love languages at work and love languages for kids or love languages for teenagers, and you'll get everything you need on a couple of forms. Because the book itself is going to be the love languages over again. And then their application to those different groups. So a lot of it is repetitious. Anything else? We are past 8:30, I think.
No, but thank you.
Absolutely. I hope to see you all next week.
Yeah. Thank you very
all.
much.
Thank
Have a
you.
great one.
All right.
Take
Have a good
care.
night. Good night,
Good night.
everybody.
Love you.